All right, we are back on the Big Blue Report featuring that man right there, the two-time Super Bowl champion and defensive captain of the New York Football Giants, Jonathan Casillas. We have Professor Big Daddy D, Ryan Darlington, and let's get into it. The Giants fell to Philadelphia. Oh, sorry, that was a couple months ago. Never mind. It's been a while since we've been on.
It's been a minute.
Yeah,
it's been a minute.
It's like an old shoe though, or it's like riding a bike. It just feels good when you get back to do it. So, guys, I can't believe the news. It's been a crazy couple days. Can you believe the Cowboys tagged Pollard? Oh, that's not the news we're going to discuss to start off.
That's not the one we're talking about. That's a different show.
That's a Cowboys show. That's down in the South America,
right.
South of America over there. And listen, guys, Daniel Jones, 4 years, $160 million. Saquon Barkley gets the tag. And we found out today as well that the Giants have already started talking to Dexter Lawrence's people about getting a long-term deal done here. We all three of us have lots of thoughts on this. And JC, we're going to go to you first. Daniel Jones, 4 years, 160, and the salary is sort of fixed in a different way to help give the Giants a little bit of a relief.
Yeah, honestly, I love the way they did it. I'm still learning how the salary cap works, and the franchise tag. And from what I've learned, basically the last couple of weeks, over listening to Joe Shane, listening to Lance Meadow and Schmelke, listen to those guys talking, all the ESPN analysts and stuff like that. From what I got from where the Giants move that they've made and securing his, I guess, long-term deal, basically 4-year deal with Daniel Jones, that it basically frees up a little bit of space, instead of putting that $32 million cap hit this year, would have been the franchise tag on Daniel Jones, which would have hit $32 million for the salary cap this year.
Yeah.
And what they're able to do, because I guess you kind of prorate it with the signing bonus, and you can kick it basically down the road, and the cap hit is like $13 or $14 million less than that.
Yep.
And then that gave them the ability to go ahead and franchise Saquon, which is, I think the odd man out in terms of the happiness scale is Saquon, but it definitely gives them time to figure out a deal before July. And then also, if they can get that deal with Saquon, now that opens up doors for Dexter Lawrence. And Joe Shane talked about Xavier McKinney. They're talking about in-house guys. And look, that's what we all wanted here. We all wanted the Giants to sign the Giants. We wanted Daniel Jones. We wanted Saquon. They got to figure out what they're doing with Julian Love. They got him because as of right now, the Giants have the leverage in terms of, the number figure. Saquon probably had it before the franchise period came to an end, and they decided not to do it, or they squared the deal away with Daniel Jones, slapped that franchise tag on Saquon. Now Saquon is kind of on the short end of the stick, and it's like, hey, you want to play for 10 mil, or do you want to play for that 12.5 that we was offering you back in October, whenever they was offering him? So Saquon is probably not the happiest guy right now. He's probably the only person that's not happy in Giants Nation. But if he can get a deal done that can give him maybe $15 to $20 million up front and get that deal done and have that security, because at the end of the day, fellas, NFL players, once you start understanding how the game works, you understanding that your time is not long in the NFL, you understand what it really means. You really want security. And a $10 million contract, it's amazing. It's amazing. $10 million guaranteed is amazing. But when you can make $20 to $30 million fully guaranteed, basically, if you would have hit the free agency, which possibility he could have made something like that, that's when you start figuring out, like, man, you're being comfortable with the deal and sitting out. You know what I mean? Like, these are all things that could happen, which nobody wants. But at the same time, you got to be able to understand kind of the mindset of Saquon. He's one of the best running backs in the league, and he's making $7 to $8 million less than the so-called highest paid running back in the league.
He already said he didn't want to break the scale, though, right? He already said he didn't want to set the table. And so really what I think reasonably, and I just read a report that they turned down right before the franchise tag. They turned down something like $13 million that was offered. I think they're probably going to end up somewhere around that 15 mark. And honestly, it's a short-term, long-term thing, because he may get if we're able to sign him instead of just like making him play on the franchise tag, smart enough to backload with Daniel Jones, because he knows he needs space right now. Shane knows he needs a little bit more room, or as much room as he can get anyway. And so I think it behooves Saquon. I think Shane's position going in here is that it behooves Saquon to sign up for a 2, 3, probably not 4, but maybe like a 3-year deal, even it out to 15 million a year, something like that. But the cap hit this year is not going to be the 10 million that it's at right now, right? Because if he plays on the franchise tag, the whole 10.1 or whatever it is hits this year. Shane doesn't want that. You started talking about the fact that we're lining up the Giants. We're lining up our internal guys. And with every contract, so now the dominoes start to fall, right? So you've signed up Daniel. You know what the cap hit is this year for him. You know that you're getting a certain amount back from KG's release, so you can have that come in. We can start now having the conversations with Saquon and figure out his contract between now and July. So that number falls into place. Then we're starting talking to Dexter Lawrence's folks. We'll probably start talking with Leonard Williams' folks, right? See if we can restructure his deal. And all of those things, now that we've got Daniel signed up, I think all of those things start to fall into place. And he is able to kind of work his magic with whatever we're going to have left, right? We need a certain amount of money to sign our draft class, right? We need a certain amount of money to potentially retain Julian Love, to potentially sign up Xavier McKinney long term, things like that.
You need a certain amount of money to take care of your broadcast team. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. Some of it's got to come our way.
Right? Yeah, you have to take care of JC and Lance Meadow, get them back on contract for next year too. There's only so much money to go around.
Right. Well, but and to your point, that's exactly right. Right. And so we know that there's a certain amount that can go around. We're going to get some back from Leonard. We're going to get some back from KG. We might have to restructure some additional deals. We're going to have enough for our draft class. We already know how much that's going to be. I don't know how much dead cap we're taking into this year, and if that comes off of the 20 something that are left over, that's left over after the Daniel deal. But it's not a small amount of money, and Shane can be smart enough to backload some of these deals and have enough to play with, so that we can actually. I think they're looking. Clearly, obviously, they need to be. This is what they're paid to do. They're looking to build for a further playoff run. We want to go deeper into the playoffs. Yeah. So, I mean, if we can set that up, we can set our core guys, the 3 or 4 core guys, right? See what we can do with the rest, right? And then draft as we need to. And that way, we're drafting best players and not for positions.
Yep.
And I just wanted to throw my 2 cents here. Up until when I heard that deal, and this even before the deal was announced, my biggest thing was I didn't want majority of that cap number being taken up by Daniel's contract. That was my biggest thing, because look, you need to fix the interior part of the offensive line. Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas have done a great job. Evan Neal's only going to get better. Andrew Thomas has blossomed into a great asset for the offensive line.
One of the best in the league.
One of the best in the league, exactly. And you need to shore up and fix some things on the defense. There's certain parts of the defense you need to upgrade. You need to restructure Leonard's deal, or might have to part ways, whichever one's going to be. You have to do. So there's things that had to get done. So my biggest thing was, hey, if the number that Daniel wanted was so unreasonable and you weren't going to be able to get there in a way where it was going to work for everybody, then my suggestion was to originally let him walk, tag Barkley, and take the rest of the money and shore up the rest of the team, so you then can be a quarterback away. And JC and I have argued so much in the past about how important the quarterback position has to be the most stable position on the field. And so the fact that they were able to make this deal and be able to sort of set it up where it wasn't affecting this year's cap, it gives me a little bit more faith in what Joe Schoen is trying to do, because the interior part of that offensive line is so very, very important. And that's been the Achilles heel since 2013. Since Eli's been here, has been that offensive line and that interior part, making sure now that we have the right side and the left side taken care of, got to fix that middle part.
Yep. And you can do that through the draft. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, and I think they start in-house first. You got to figure out what they're going to do with Feliciano and Nick Gates. You know, I love both of those guys. You know, but like you said, there's some good interior linemen coming out in the draft. And the thing is, you don't need 5 linemen. You need about 10 of them, you know, especially in training camp. You need about 13 in training camp. And then you let, you know, the strong will survive. And then you'll see, you know, who can get through training camp, who's your guys through training camp. And hopefully, you know, knock on wood, hopefully you got a lot of these guys like a Zudu and all of these guys that the Giants drafted. The Giants has had the most ACL tears in the last 2 years than any team in the NFL. I think it's like the number's like 11 or something like that. And the next closest team is like 6 or 7. That's insane. That's almost double the next closest. So with that being said, the Giants are doing, I think, first of all, Joe Shane, and we talked about this. The Giants did their thing during the season. I'm talking about the players and Dayball. They did their thing during the season. Kafka called the great offensive games. Wink Martindale called great defensive games. All the players came to play, right? The guys that were healthy came to play. Now, Joe Shane is showing that, oh, yeah, Joe Shane is just as valuable as Daniel Jones, just as valuable as Saquon Barkley, just as valuable as Dexter Lawrence. Joe Shane is showing that he's just as valuable as Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
And that is a great sign
for the
future of this franchise. Because when you think about a franchise moving forward, yes, it has to do with the players. Yes, it has to do with the coaching, but you got to have the people that's buying the groceries, right? Before the, you know, the chef is Dayball, right? And you got all these sous chefs and Saquon and all these guys. Check. Now you got the guy buying the groceries. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's figuring out the budget and what you need to get these groceries. He's figuring out, okay, these things work for us. Let's keep these guys in-house. Let's get these guys happy. Use that franchise tag that all the teams didn't use this year, which I thought it would be a little bit more teams use a franchise tag, but I'm looking at the tag numbers now. It's not even that many. So I think it's less than 10 people. And the Giants did it at that position. That is that controversial running back position, right? And it gives the Giants leverage now in terms of Saquon versus the New York Giants, in terms of business versus business, and who's going to win this business battle. And listening to Joe Shane talk about the Jones deal, he looked very happy about the deal that he got him, because he was able to kick money down the road, secure your number one guy. He said it. He kept on saying it over and over again. We had to get the Daniel Jones deal done. He was at the combine. He came straight, and he had to talk to athletes first. That's the first thing they did, and they've been talking ever since. You know, and they didn't leave the room until they finished talking. You know, I think they got a little nap at nighttime, and they came back again to iron out that deal. But that's the priority. The Giants and Joe Shane, they're showing you the priority was to sign Daniel Jones. It wasn't to franchise tag him. It wasn't to, you know, have him walk. Definitely wasn't have him walk. Get this guy signed, and let's figure out a number that works for everybody. We can, number one, we can get our running back figured out. Because the running back being one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. Let's figure this out. That franchise tag, that deadline was looming on everybody's head, but it wasn't for Daniel Jones. It was for Saquon. You know, and then now they was able to do that. And now that gave them a little bit of breathing room to go ahead and negotiate with Saquon to get him signed to a long-term deal and have him be a Giant for life. Because we don't want Saquon, because you know who's going to get him.
For sure.
The Commanders. Somebody's going to get him in a division.
You bet. We'd be seeing that dude twice a year for the next 5 years.
I don't want that,
right?
You don't want that.
This is what I'm kind of excited about.
I just literally just had this picture of Saquon walking around in a Commander's uniform and how miserable he would look in that Commander. He'd be like,
let me tell you something. Twice a year, if he goes in the division, twice a year, Saquon is going to be
oh my God.
He's going to turn up. Let me tell you something. So when I was leaving the Giants, right, my last year with the Giants, fellas, I said the 2 teams I want to play for. Mind you, I wasn't a young dad. My daughter was like 4 or 5 at a time. I was a young dad. I was, you know, late 20s. I was 30 years old when I retired, basically. And I was literally I put the dad hat on, and I kind of lost the football hat. Like it got lost somewhere. And I got lost in being a dad, you know? So my thing is I want to play if I can do my 10th year, because I played 9 years and I was going to do my 10th year, if I could play somewhere close, my ideal team would be the New York Jets. That would be the ideal team to play for because of proximity. I didn't care. I didn't care who I play for. Proximity, so I can be a dad. And I can I can drop my daughter off at school. I can go to her games, go to her judo fights. I just wanted to be a dad while I was playing in the NFL because I didn't neglect it. But when you're focused in on something like football, something that you got to be fully dedicated into, and I wasn't a dad before I was in the NFL. I was a dad while I was in the NFL. So as I was able to transition away from ball and got a little taste of what a real dad life was like, I was like, okay, I can't stop this life even though I want to play at my 10th year. Yeah. So my second team was the Philadelphia Eagles. The reason why, because I get to play the Giants twice. That was the reason why I wanted to go to the Eagles. Had nothing to do with the Eagles whatsoever. It was the proximity that I can get to my daughter, and I could play the Giants twice. So there is something to that, especially when you feel like you're spited. Especially when you feel like you've been, not taken advantage of, but maybe kicked.
But you've been had.
Yeah. Right, you've been had. Right.
But
for sure.
But you can tell me, JC, do players think about that? Like when they're when they do think about that? Like
absolutely.
I asked Landon Collins that at one point too. I'm like, when you were playing for Washington, did you think about it when you were playing the Giants? He's like, he said it was always the first 2 games he always looked at on the calendar.
That's it. I mean, because at the end of the day, and you take Landon, for example, Gettleman was here. Landon was a really good player. The Giants had a really bad year in 2017. You can't name a player on that roster that had a good year. You can't. Yeah. Everybody had a bad year. Everybody, like collectively, that's when it was the Hail Mary in Green Bay in 2016, and that cursed the 2007. I don't know what happened. I was playing. I still don't know what happened in 2017. We were horrible. No one played well that season.
Didn't come together.
And then Landon got shipped out of town. He didn't get shipped out of town. They didn't do nothing with him.
Right.
They didn't do anything.
Let him
with
go.
Yeah, he was begging
for a traded him.
He wanted to be
something.
Here.
Right. They didn't do anything with him. And then the Commanders, I guess they were the Redskins at the time, or whatever the football team. I don't know. Whatever that Washington team name was back then. Whatever they were called back then. They signed him and they made him the highest paid safety in the league. So look, to say Saquon don't have an opportunity to be the highest paid running back in the league is a foolish thing to say. That's a foolish thing to say. He definitely has the opportunity to get that because there's teams out there that think they're one running back away from getting to the Super Bowl. Because I'm not going to say they're going to win it because the Super Bowl will go through Patrick Mahomes from here on out until he gets injured or something happens with Andy Reid. I don't know, something. But Arrowhead, the AFC is definitely going to go through Arrowhead for sure every single year until that guy retires. That's for sure.
I don't want to agree with you, but you're right. I don't want to agree with you.
But in the NFC, as of right now, until Jalen Hurts stops playing football at a high level, it might go through Philly too. The great thing about that is that the Giants get to see them. Sure. That's a good and a bad thing. You have the measuring stick in your division, and that's who you're drafting against.
Yep.
You're not looking towards Tampa anymore. You're not looking for the dominant Saints, how they were in the late 2000s. You're not looking, at Seattle, how they were in early 2000s and late 2000s. Well, maybe San Fran. San Fran, I think, is going to be a team that you could, but you don't have to look further than 90 miles down 95.
Yep.
You got to draft to beat the freaking Eagles, fellas.
That's right.
That's what you're drafting.
But here's the Eagles.
I feel dirty here. I feel dirty saying that, by the way.
You know what? I don't know, and I'll tell you why. I feel like, and I may be completely wrong about this, but I feel like, yes, Jalen Hurts is amazing. He's going to be an amazing quarterback for a very long time in this league, but he's going to start losing his supporting cast. They can't keep a stack like that together forever. It's either going to become financially infeasible, and people are going to start retiring. I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of an aging team because they're stacked with so many veterans because they got guys like Ndamukong Suh and Fletcher Cox, and you've got Linval Joseph, you got all of those guys that are phenomenal, but they're long in the tooth and they're not going to play forever. So I see them at a very high level now, but I see them getting worse before they get better. And what I see in our
I
Giants,
agree with that.
I see on our Giants is that we are on the way up. We have retained our head coach. We have retained our offensive and defensive coordinators. We have just locked in our franchise quarterback. We are well on our way to locking in our franchise running back. We are now talking to our franchise defensive linemen, right? We're restructuring deals. We're making things happen so that we are on the up. Okay. And the other thing, so I hear a lot of people talking, and we're going to get into the contract stuff now. I know we've all been kind of preparing for it. I hear a lot of people say 40 million is too much. I was one of those people, like last week. I was one of those people last week saying 40, he's just not worth 40, all of this kind of stuff. Right now, in my mind, I still believe he's not quite worth $40 million a year. However, I do believe that over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, he will be worth every penny of that $40 million a year that we are paying him, right? Because he is on the upswing. We are closer now, having him in play, we are closer to a deeper playoff run and a Super Bowl win than we are without him, right? So we're not just paying for current stats for what he is right now. We're paying for what he's going to be after another year, 2, 3 years in Daboll's system. And guys, talent like that, if he can continue to grow the way he's been going, if the Daboll and his coaching staff can continue to shape him the way that they've been, I don't want to be crazy about it, but we're talking potential Super Bowl caliber.
I have to be the asshole. Okay. And
We're used to that. That's okay.
I apologize now, but JC, you can always correct me because you've been one of these people who signed these contracts before. I've
never signed a $40 million contract.
Well, no, but I'm talking about.
You think you'd be living in Jersey?
If he signed a $40 million
island in Brazil,
I was about to say
it's called JC Island.
I was about to say if JC signed a $40 million contract, we would never. It's almost like he'd be in the witness protection program. Nobody able to find JC. He'd be living on an island with a bar. When you put on the faucet, it'd be margaritas. That's what that would be. Right. But what I mean by that is meaning that you've been a player who signed a contract for millions of dollars, and the thing is, my big takeaway with contracts, and I felt this way with pro basketball, first is sometimes I try to figure out whether you're getting paid for the work that you've done, and the contract is a reward for that. And then some other sports, you're paying it because of what you're going to do. And I feel that this contract is a contract that is signed for what he is going to do in the future. We saw little glimpses of it through his first 4 years with the Giants. And to be honest with you, I thought the regime that came in, Joe Sean, Daboll, and even Mara at that point, when everybody came in last January, by not picking up the 5th-year option, I felt at the time it was the right thing to do. Because you have to make him work for it. Now, throughout the year, on this podcast, I kept on saying all year long, it has to be the right dollar amount, because otherwise, up until yesterday, Ryan and I were on the phone, and some other people I know who I trust their opinion with. We were sitting there saying, "Look, Daniel Jones is requesting $40 million. Are you taking Daniel Jones over this quarterback, this quarterback?" Because these are the guys who are in that pay structure. And then someone else said to me, well, you have to use Kirk Cousins as the measuring stick because his contract is a bad contract, or you can make that debate on whether it's a good contract or bad contract, but that's the measuring stick at this point. And in my eyes, I did not want to give Daniel Jones $40 million a year. And Ryan just brought up a good point. Now they're going to bank on him improving in this system and hoping they'll get some wide receivers, and then they can start throwing the ball. Because listen, $40 million a year for only 15 touchdowns for a season, that doesn't fly for me. I'm sorry, it's just the way I feel. But hopefully, there's better things to come with that once he starts getting some more weapons to throw the ball to.
He had a $20 million season.
Yes.
He had a $25 million season, but he's going to have $40 million season. Sorry, go ahead, JC.
Lenore, you're right. Ron, you made some great points. You too, Randy. And listen. When you, like, for me, like when I was when I was going through my contract stuff and we were talking, they were only worried about the year prior and how many snaps I played, and I was hurt and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But when you sign your franchise quarterback, this is why I don't understand what they're doing with Lamar Jackson and over in Baltimore. I really don't understand what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the league is doing. They're talking about teams talking about they're not, interested.
Not interested immediately.
Like, what are we talking about here? That's neither here nor there.
How are you not interested in Lamar Jackson?
Because what he's done, he's worth $50 million a year, what he's done. But when you sign your franchise quarterback, it's not always about, like you said, what you've done. It's about what you're capable of doing, your potential. Because when you're throwing the guaranteed number is like $80 million.
Yeah.
So no matter what happens to Daniel Jones, he's getting paid $80 million. It don't have to be. It's probably not going to get to 160, but it's definitely going to be 80. That's for sure. And we don't know how long he's going to last for. Daniel Jones might not last past this year, and hopefully he does. Knock on wood, right? Knock on wood. But you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, when you get to these contracts, right? Both players and the teams, they both look for security. Yeah. That's what you look for. Yeah. And when you lock up a franchise quarterback who has the potential to lead your team deep into the playoffs, because he's already done it to, win one playoff game, the first time the Giants won a playoff game in over 10 years, right? Mm-hmm. And shorthanded, banged up, right? I'm talking about the team, not Daniel Jones. I'm talking about the team, shorthanded, not even a number 2 receiver, right? For playing for you.
Sorry, Darius.
No linebackers, couldn't stop the run all year, right? Like, there were so many different things that happened, and you watched a guy who people made fun of, that they didn't re-sign his 5th-year deal, sign his 5th-year deal, falling down against the Eagles years ago. Like, people made fun of Daniel Jones. Yeah. And you watch this guy put the team on his back against some quality opponents and beat them.
Play clean.
And then hang in the pocket, and then don't throw interceptions this year. He had the highest, the most efficient touchdown to interception ratio with only 15 touchdowns. Yeah, right. He didn't even throw a lot. Yeah. That means he didn't throw a lot of interceptions. So for what the Giants wanted, he checked every box that they wanted. So now they have the potential, like, hey, let's get some guys around them. First off, let's get them protected. Let's get they signed. First thing they did was assign Isaiah Hodgins. That was the first thing they did. We got a guy. He may not be our number 1, but he can be a solid number 2. Yep. Definitely a great number 3. Yep. Solid number 2. Mm-hmm. We could possibly number 1. Let's get Daniel Jones signed. Let's get the next best player, if not the best player of the New York Giants, and Saquon Barkley signed. Hearing Joe Shane talk, okay, we're gonna figure out Dexter Lawrence. We're gonna figure out Xavier McKinney. They're trying to shore up in-house guys, and I'm telling you right now, they're gonna make a play for somebody. I don't know who it's gonna be. It's gonna be a big time guy.
What?
I know they're gonna do it. I think that's why they're doing this, to make a play for a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins, somebody that's out there that's going to come to this team and take off and just kill.
I can
look
confirm
how
that
the Giants are set up right now. When you look outside, looking into you're like, man, they made it to the playoffs last year. Man, they went on the road and beat the Minnesota Vikings, who was the number 2 seed overall, right? Like, in the playoffs, like
14-3 team.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, okay. They signed their quarterback. Okay, Daniel Jones looked great at times this year. Mm-hmm. Can run the football. Wow, they signed probably the best running back in the league. They got him for a year. This is a place that they want to go to. Dayball looks like he knows what he's doing. Yep. Wink Martindale, the proof is in the pudding with him, right? And now Joe Shane is pulling the strings on the back end. He's making magic happen on the back end. Don't be surprised when he makes some magic and somebody magically appears here that gets the Giants a playoff win and make even the push. Because look, at the end of the day, I'm not even looking towards the playoffs. You got to beat Philly. You got to beat the Cowboys.
Yep.
Let's just keep it real, fellas. Let's not think about January. Let's worry about the regular season.
Yeah, let's worry about September.
Against the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, the Giants are a better team than they were last year.
Yeah, for sure. And not for nothing, but we're not – I'm convinced that we're not going to get our number 1 receiver through the draft, right? You can't take a guy out of college and make him a number 1 guy in the NFL right off the bat.
Very rare.
I would very, very rare. I would rather use that draft capital tied up in some sort of trade for somebody that we know is a proven commodity.
Let's go. There's guys out there, maybe not free agents, but
Right.
there are guys on teams like even Devontae. I know they just made a trade for him. I saw him in the Pro Bowl.
Yep.
I mean, I saw him out there for Super Bowl. I don't think he want to stay without his quarterback.
You know what I'm thinking though? I gotta believe that they're not looking to pay huge money. And so I wonder if it's not going to be a guy like Devontae, or if it's not going to be a guy like T. Higgins, or if it's not going to be those guys that are already established number one. I think they might be looking for somebody that they can make into an established number one. Allow Daniel Jones to make the guy a number one, because that's going to cost you a lot less money. And
you got somebody in mind?
You're not going to. I don't know. I'd have to look.
He knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy.
Knows a guy.
Listen, I don't come to this podcast with knowledge. I come to it with bullshit and theories. So at the end of the day, that's where we're at. But I have the feeling that this is what they do. This is what the coaching staff does. They take guys off of the midden heap and they make them into something amazing. Right. And so when you're dealing with a cap, we are going to be pretty tight on cap money. Now that we've got Daniel locked up, once we get Saquon's deal, we've still got a lot to go. We've got to talk about Xavier McKinney. We got to talk about Dexter Lawrence. We got to talk about Julian Love. We got to talk about all of those guys. There's still a lot of money that needs to be spent. So we can't spend that kind of money. We can't take that kind of cap in a trade. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a guy that's just almost there. And we're going to take that guy, we're going to pluck him, we're going to pop him in, take him to the next level, and have him be our number one.
Well, I can confirm, and I know this from the other side, that DeAndre Hopkins was a form of conversation with the Giants. That was talked about, and I know that from the Arizona side, not coming from the Giants side. So here's what I'll tell you about the receiver situation. This franchise has had a history, if you look at the Plaxico Burress's of the world, being able to find a guy who was overlooked on a team like Pittsburgh, to bring him over and make him the number one option. A lot of people remember Plaxico Burress in Pittsburgh, but not being the man there. He came here and became the man.
Right. He wasn't the guy.
Right. Yep. But then Eli went the opposite way. The second Super Bowl year, Hakeem Nicks, Victor Cruz, Mario Manningham, those guys were Eli's guys. Those guys would not gotten those contracts without Eli Manning. So I think there's a point of truth to what you're saying, Ryan, but I'm pretty sure right now on the team out there that there's a number 2 or number 3 wide receiver who probably has the skills of a number 1 receiver out there that you could probably steal and all of a sudden have that breakout year with us.
Yeah.
That Daniel can turn to.
Listen, I heard Kenny Galladay's available.
Well, listen, I heard a rumor, Ryan, that he only had one more touchdown than you did last season. So,
that's right.
I mean, in 2 years, you mean? Jeez. Man. Look, I wish nothing but the best for him. But yeah, he can't play for the Giants no more, man. I'm sorry. But I'll tell you what, though. Saquon and Odell's kind of cool. And I know I said Odell not going to sign in New York. I know I said that. But sitting out a whole year, you know what I'm saying, not playing for a whole year, it changes things. You know what I mean? Like, look, I think wherever Odell goes, he's going to be a great player. I think the window is slightly wider than it was last year.
You think he still got the juice?
No.
Not to be number one.
Not the juice that I saw when I was playing on the same field as him. No. But he'll still be a quality receiver. Maybe not a number 1, but he'll still be a great possession wide receiver because he still has amazing catch radius.
Yeah.
He can catch basically anything. He runs really good routes. Maybe he's not at that 99 speed in Madden. Maybe he's at 89 or 91.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not taking 70-yard slants to the crib anymore. Right. But he'll catch a post. He'll catch a dig. He'll catch a comeback. He'll be a great possession receiver. And that's the thing. The Giants had nothing but those guys last year.
Right.
Isaiah Hodgins had a great catch, of course, in the playoffs. And then, he had great moments, but it wasn't too many slants to the crib. Slayton had a good play. I think I was against the Texans. We made a couple guys miss, and then he took one up the sideline. Yeah. But it's not really like that, for the Giants. And I think the Giants need a guy like that. But if they don't have a guy like that, and he has several reliable receivers that he can rely on, not only on first and second down, but when it comes down to third down and in the red zone, that he can get the ball to certain guys, and he knows they're going to be there, and it doesn't have to be one guy. I like that a lot better. You spoke about Eli Manning. You named Hakeem Nicks, Victor Cruz, Steve Smith. Yep. Remember him? Like there were some reliable guys that ran great routes. Wasn't going to take the top off the coverage usually. Yep. You know what I'm saying? But they were reliable guys. Great catch radius. Put the ball in them. They're going to catch the ball, make outstanding catches at times. Yep. And none of them were like tremendously great. Victor Cruz had a really, really good year. One really of those
couple years,
1,200 receiving yards in the slot, kind of making guys miss, you know, but like he wasn't a 1,600 receiving season. He never had one of those. I don't know how many Giants receivers ever had one of those. You definitely need a strong receiver committee. I think you have two pieces already. I like Richie James. I like Richie James. I like Isaiah Hodgins. I didn't like neither one as the number one. But I like them a lot because Richie James always got open.
Yeah, and he caught the ball. Like he caught the ball. Dude did not drop balls.
No, he made every catch make it look like it was the most difficult catch in the whole entire world.
He fumbled a couple of times.
That's on special teams. Special teams doesn't count. Come on.
Here's a question, and JC, you have to, take your friendship hat off on this one and put your business hat back on. I know they terminated his contract right after the season, but are you bringing Sterling Shepard back?
Ooh, I was going to ask about Darius Slayton. This is good conversation too. Go ahead.
If Sterling can take a really, really team friendly maybe league min, absolutely. Because when you think about leadership on the Giants, where is it coming from? Saquon's a young leader, but Shep has been through the fire, bro. Shep has been through the fire.
Shep did not have to stay around the team last year after he went out with injury. He was there every single day in practice.
In the league.
Yeah,
not the Dallas Cowboys. It was Sterling Shepard.
Yeah,
number one cheerleader in the league. And I hung out with them after they beat the Colts to secure the playoff spot. Sterling was the main guy. He was the guy, and everybody was feeding off of him. You need a guy like that in the locker room. I just feels like, I'm sorry. It just felt like they had to make a tough business decision with his contract because they restructured him going into this past season. I don't think it was a tough decision. I think it might maybe hurtful to everybody else, but not to Joe Shane and Dayball. They didn't draft him.
No, you're right.
They're sitting back and watching him kind of go through this, injury struggle basically throughout his whole career. But at the end of the day, they know what he brings to the team. They seen what he did for the team. They seen that. And I think it'll be advantageous to sign him. Leagueman, he doesn't need the money anymore. At the end of the day, if he hit the market, there's no money out there for him.
Yep.
Right.
If he signs with the New York Giants, it's a win-win, especially at the leagueman. I don't know what that number is right now, but it won't be a big cap hit. It'd be like 1 point something, whatever that number is. And listen, he'll be happy here. He got his daughters here. You know what I'm saying? Like, he got his family here. Like, he loves it here. He wants to be a part of the franchise. I've spoken to him plenty of times, and I'm pretty sure he'll take a very happy deal and then maybe have 500 receiving yards on a year. I think he'd be happy, especially if he gets through healthy.
Yep.
Because
so that's the catch, though.
Right.
And ACL is a 2-year recovery, right? I mean, when you're talking about a guy that relies on speed, relies on that burst, right? Being able to make sharp cuts, hard cuts on fields that maybe aren't that fantastic, right? That's a tall order. And so I guess for that, it's got to come down to what the doctors say as well, right? I mean, if
that's first things first.
If there's no value there, whether you want to or not, whether it makes sense or not, whether it'd be great to have him in the locker room or not, that may make the deal. I mean, what I'm actually thinking about though is Darius Slayton as well. When we're talking about, do we think about bringing him back for depth, right? Not to be our number one guy, but also to kind of provide some additional familiarity in the room and to provide a little bit of depth.
And Daniel Jones loves him.
Daniel Jones loves him, but the problem was he felt and I know this because he made it known, and then other conversations, but he felt very slighted about his contract situation going into last season. They held him off the field on the last couple days of camp to work through his contract. So and they cut his contract down. Yep. And he felt very slighted by it.
If he's an honest man, which I hope he is, he watched himself play this year. He didn't have that great of a year. He was very inconsistent. He was the deep threat guy, but was he? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
He had
he was, but was
one
he?
long catch per game. He had,
You know what I mean? Like,
if,
he's supposed to be the knock the top off the defense guy,
Yeah.
but he was very inconsistent. So I like Slayton a lot. I think he did great things. But the thing is, I don't really love none of the receivers.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I have an interesting thought.
Mhm.
Okay. We started talking about guys like Victor Cruz being an amazing slot guy. We talked about guys like Hakeem Nicks, right? If you go way back, the well-dressed Amani Toomer. We started talking about guys that can kind of go up and get it, and Plaxico, things like that. And I start looking at the receiving core that we had this year, and I see a slot guy that's speedy, that can catch the ball in Wan'Dale Robinson. I see a big guy that can go and be a possession receiver and run good routes and make good catches underneath in Isaiah Hodgins, which kind of reminds me a little bit of Hakeem Nicks, right? You also have like we were talking about, Darius Slayton is the Y in a 4 receiver set, right? But at the end of the day, the one thing that we don't have is the Plaxico, the speedy guy, the tall guy that can go up and win a 1-on-1 matchup or even a 2-on-1 matchup, right? They're talking about needing guys that can separate, right? Needing speedy dudes, because Daniel can throw that ball. He can get the ball there. It's just a matter of, do we have somebody that can go up and catch it? So it will be interesting to see what kinds of pieces they can put in place, because I think we've got elements already there that can kind of resemble some of the more what's the word I'm looking for? Successful receiving cores of the past.
And I also you're right. You're 100% correct. And look, the simple fact of the matter is, this has been the conversation since midseason last year, is what are they going to do with this receiver position? I love Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Wan'Dale Robinson is a great number 2, number 3 receiver. But like you said, we need a number 1. Guys, I have to bring up one point before we go, and it's not even that much Giant related, but we will see him either way, no matter what happens during this offseason, as an opponent. And I have to ask you both about Aaron Rodgers. He's either going to be in a Jets uniform or a Packers uniform. The Giants have both teams this year at home, so they're seeing Aaron Rodgers no matter what. JC, you've shared a field with Aaron Rodgers. You know what type of competitor he is. How awkward would it be to see him in a Jets uniform?
I'll tell you what, I might go to one of those games, man. Then listen, he is he's outstanding. 4 MVPs, the quickest release I've probably ever seen out of any quarterback ever. Dynamic outside the pocket. His Hail Marys are legendary. I've never beat the guy. I think I played him 5 times in my career. I never beat him. And he's coming, his career is, the lights at the end of the tunnel. You can see that. Tom Brady was kind of the last of the OGs. I think Stafford, you could throw Stafford in there too. I don't know if Matt Ryan's on a roster right now, but those guys are like, they started twinkling off. You know what I'm saying? They start dwindling off in their play. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is doing that quite yet. I think he still has a lot of juice left in the tank. So for me, I would love to. First of all, I would love the Giants to beat freaking Aaron Rodgers. I would love for that to happen
again.
But I think he's an absolute legend. And when it comes to Green Bay, one of my guys at physical therapy is a huge Green Bay fan, a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. And I told him, I said straight up, the Green Bay Packers had to be the most underachieving team probably in the history of sports. Because at the end of the day, you had a quarterback that won 4 MVPs and only got to 1 Super Bowl and won it. That's it. Yep. They only got there 1 time, guys, in 15 years.
Yeah. And that's
in the NFC. The NFC hasn't been that great. Like the NFC consistently, like there wasn't Tom Brady in the NFC. Right. You know what I'm saying? Well, until the last few years, yes.
Right, sure.
The last few years, but right. And prior for the first 12 years of his career, not to say he didn't play, good opponents, he did. You know what I'm saying? Cardinals were good. The Cowboys were good. Even the Giants, were good, And he definitely had some teams, but he's won 4 MVPs, and that's regular season MVPs. For some reason, I don't know what happens to him in the Green Bay in the playoffs, but they don't figure it out. And look, I don't want him to win because that means the Giants are not going to win. But at the same time, I feel like, I think the Packers franchise is an amazing franchise. but there has to be one of the most underachieving franchises given the quarterback that they had for the last 15 years.
So it's crazy though, because as good as he is, if he doesn't have all-star receivers, he doesn't scare me.
Well, I know.
Right? We saw that when the Giants played him, right? I mean, we were able to come out with a win because it was just an underwhelming performance. If he doesn't have really good people to throw the ball to, he can't do it all himself. He can't run the ball as well, right? I don't know. I mean, it would be very interesting to see what kind of weapons they're able to put around him if he goes to the Jets.
They got some weapons now. The Jets got weapons. That was the knock on them because they got so many weapons.
They were a quarterback away.
And then they found a quarterback in White, and he gets his ribs broken like 5 times. Like, he couldn't stay healthy. So
you both said this made a very interesting point, and I think this is what ended up separating Mahomes now from everybody else is that second Super Bowl ring. Mahomes, there's a lot of guys who win one, a lot of great players who win one, but when you win 2, it puts you in another stratosphere. And
then the way he won it too, right? He won it on a supposedly rebuilding year.
Yeah,
right. Get rid of the number 1 receiver possibly in the NFL, right? Get rid of him, kind of trying to figure it out early, but then down the stretch, there was no question that he's the best player in the NFL. No question about it whatsoever. And then they basically beat the brakes off a Philadelphia Eagle team that was dominant versus every single team that they played. That had a lot to do with Mahomes, and it had a lot to do with Andy Reid.
Yeah.
And with that combination, and that's why I feel so optimistic about the Giants, because when it comes down to it, every single winning team, when you talk about franchise, dynasty type teams,
quarterback and coach.
Quarterback, head coach.
Yeah.
And yes, you got to have a strong defense. Yes, you got to have a running game. That's football. But championship football, defense, running back, head coach, quarterback has to be there to build a dynasty over years. That's what the Chiefs have. And I feel like the Giants are working on that right now.
Yep.
Got a long way to go. But the measuring stick is not further than 90 miles down the road in the Philadelphia Eagles.
100%.
The Giants have they have a long road in front of them. They have a lot of ground to make up. I'm really happy. I think we're all really happy where the Giants are, especially after yesterday with that franchise tag going to Saquon and the best player. We feel like on the Giants, securing a franchise quarterback and then opening up space to secure other guys and possibly bringing in a number 1 receiver, a middle linebacker, another safety, another corner, offensive lineman that's proven himself, and then doing very well in the draft. And I think we're all pretty optimistic that Joe Shane knows what the hell
what he's doing. 100%.
I feel for the first time in 2 GMs, I feel like we have the right guy. Nothing personal, Mr. Gettleman or Mr. Reese, but I think we know what we're doing right now. So,
yeah, man,
guys, thank you very much. This has been a fun Big Blue Report. Good to have the fam back right now on the on the air doing this again. We will definitely be back soon. Keep breaking down the Giants offseason, keeping an eye on everything what's going on. Free agency starts next week, boys. So next week's that's where it's going to get fun. By the way, Ryan, you can never say that you're not smart because I what we're talking about here, because I can't call you the professor if you say that.
Well, that's right. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking genius then. There we go.
All right, boys. For Jonathan Casillas, the 2-time Super Bowl champion and defensive captain of the New York Giants, and of course the professor, Big Daddy D, Ryan Darlington over there. I'm Randy Zellea from Back Sports Page. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time talking free agency here on the Big Blue Report featuring Jonathan Casillas.